Right, in other news now, the Department of Human Settlements is taking part in the second session of the United Nations Habitat Assembly in Nairobi, Kenya, which starts today and ends on the 9th. Now, the Assembly aims to, amongst others, find solutions to eradicate informal settlements and improve the lives of those living in poverty. It is the highest global decision-making body on sustainable urbanization and human settlements and convenes every 4 years. SABC News international editor Sophie Mokoena spoke to South Africa's Minister of Human Settlements, Mamoloko Kubayi, on issues related to the country.
The issue of COVID-19, but also the challenges around what we are seeing with cost of living, cost of building material, makes it quite difficult for us to be able to be comfortable that we are going to meet our targets for 2030 agenda.
Well, what were the targets and where are we as a country, perhaps when we zoom into South Africa?
Look, as a country in terms of SDG 11, we're doing our best in terms of policy for creating sustainable human settlements. That's why we no longer have Department of Housing, but it's a human settlement because we believe that it's about integration of communities and also recognition of urbanization. When you look at the new urban agenda, you link it because the new urban agenda was meant to respond to what we are doing in terms of attaining of SDG 11. But what we are saying as well, we said, when you look at SDG 11, you link it again with SDG 16. Then you integrate that. You see transport as part of mode of transport because we're saying let's not put communities where it's far from their workplace, where it's far from economic activities. And our response as a country is what we are doing with our gap market housing, social housing, what we are doing in terms of the rental space, closing the apartheid special development planning. But again, when you look at how we build in terms of our RDP, if you look at the model of mega cities, you'll find that we are building houses, but we are integrating them across equal income levels. Then we would have schools, sites that we are creating. We'll have spaces in terms of children where they can play, but also economic activities such as your malls that people can be able to work. So we are responding in terms of integrated human settlements as a country. But we do have, as you know, some of the gaps, but we have quite a lot that we have done. You would see that last week I was opening at Lufereng, one of our mixed development that brings together various communities together in terms of building. And we have spaces where there's parks for children to play. So we're cognizant that it's not about a shelter, but it's about creating comfort and security for communities.
Climate change has also added to the challenges that we are facing. If you look at what transpired in KZN in relation to the floods, how far are you to relocate people but also to make housing available for them, shelter?
Look, definitely when we talk about disaster, natural disasters and climate change, we are the affected ones. I have said when the conversation, talking even when I was in WEF, I said part of what is a problem, you find that when we talk about funding for climate change, they talk about energy transition. They don't talk about what climate change would have cost in displacement of people and therefore allocating resources in that area, because that's what we need to do. We need to understand that climate change displaces communities and therefore it's billions of money that is needed to be able to place people correctly. What we are doing in KZN, you'd understand after the disasters, major disasters that we had, then we went and put people in temporary accommodation because we couldn't put them in the halls. Land availability and land preparation in KZN is one of the most difficult lessons learned, I can say, for myself and the entire team, because we thought that we'll definitely get a land and put people there, temporary units, and then build. But we found that as geotechs came in, we found that the lands were not suitable. You moved from one land parcel to the other, assessing, and the time was moving. Hence, we then took a decision to move them into apartments. Some were student accommodation, but some were rentals, which is not long-term sustainable because it's quite costly. And that's why now we are almost at stages where we've put them temporary between this last financial year and this financial year, and then we are looking at moving into sustainability. And those lessons is what has taught us to say from the 1st of April this year, we're no longer doing temporary units. We want to move into the issues of ABT. ABT, which is alternative technology, there we are told here as well, some of the companies are showcasing what they are doing in terms of innovation in how we build for the future. We'll look at what they are doing. We're intending to learn to across the country. We've been calling for private sector that are involved in that to say this is the way to go to the future because they are sustainable. They are cost effective because we don't have to spend twice, but they are quicker to respond. And that's what we are looking at going forward.
Minister, let me take this opportunity also as the chair of the economic cluster. You want to do all this, and not only you, health, education, and as I pointed out earlier on, we had lots of challenges, COVID-19, the war in Ukraine, and now we see South Africa being under pressure from the global community and the investors in relation to the BRICS summit. As the chair of the economic cluster, the president announced that he is going to appoint ministers who will embark on different campaigns in the G7 particularly, to try and communicate South Africa's position. As the chair of the economic cluster, are we going to get it right? It looks like we are in for a serious challenge in relation to the economic growth and turning the situation around.
Look, as President said during his debate in Parliament, it is important to make sure that you do not leave other people to communicate on your behalf, because that's where you have a mediated message. So it's best to be able to present your case, explain. All these countries are important in terms of our trade as a country, whether you talk about BRICS, because China currently is the number 1 in terms of our trade relation as South Africa. But when you look at trade investment, foreign direct investment between EU, UK and USA, they almost take about 70% of foreign direct investment. So that also remains a block that is important. Hence, maintaining South Africa's interest to saying we take this stand in the interest of the people of South Africa, and therefore this is why we take this decisions is important. I think quite a number of people talk about our presence as BRICS, and that's why I'm explaining the importance of BRICS. BRICS remains a global force that South Africa is important to participate in. There are many countries who want to join BRICS, and therefore it will not be wise and it will not be in South Africa's interest for South Africa to depart from BRICS. But equally, South Africa, the non-aligned stance that we've always taken in terms of ensuring that we have the interests of South Africa. We take positions on that basis, engaging with these global partners that we've had. President sent his envoy as well, Dr. Mafumadi, who went as well to the US to explain our position. And clearly there is that message that is going, because people were pushing us because of misunderstanding. And I do believe that right now people are starting to understand where we stand as South Africa, that we do not have anyone that we preference above the other, but we are a global country that has its own challenges, that it's got to have look into the interests of its people and therefore get the economy growing. We have our own domestic challenges, and that's why we've got to be able to face them and deal with them. The ESCOM issues, the load shedding, which is major part of what is constraining our economy, and that's why the outer part of it remains important, but it's in the interest of ensuring that South Africans have food on the table. We deal with poverty, we deal with inequality, but we'll deal with unemployment, and therefore that's important as we address all those issues.
Minister, thank you for your time. We will have these conversations tomorrow after your presentation. The Assembly here looking at the issues related to informal settlement. We'll continue giving you comprehensive coverage of this Assembly. Back to you in studio.